All right. So now we get an echo with me on both things.
Right.
Let me go off of Facebook on here to see if maybe that will end echoing, because it's still...
Yeah.
All right. So okay, so James, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll see if the people on my iPad can hear you.
Okay, let's do that then. Yeah. Okay, ready to go now?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Well, along with Grace Winterwood and myself, we run the Criminal Justice Reform Journal. It's an organisation that its primary function is to raise awareness for cases such as Melissa's. Obviously, with the legal system, when you read any filings, the language is extremely terse, it's difficult to understand, and a lot of the time deliberately so. So what we're trying to do is be an intermediary that takes a filing in certain cases and we'll try and explain what they're saying and put it in layman's terms. Because people are really, really passionate and they're really interested about this. They're really interested about wrongful convictions and learning and understanding what's going on. But it's not easy because you know, as you know, you look at a legal document, my goodness, is it difficult to understand. So this is part of what we want to do. We want to engage the public who are already very interested and help them understand what is going on.
Right, yeah. Oh, sorry. Now, when I talk to you, it's echoing back to me.
Okay.
So, do you want to give people background on how you came to start writing about both Melissa and Stephen?
Well, I mean, Melissa's and Stephen's cases have certain things in common, but they're also very, very different. I mean, if you look at Melissa's case, this is not the difference between Melissa's and Stephen's case, at the moment, Stephen's about looking maybe for an alternate suspect. We're talking about Denny. With Melissa, there's a tragedy that Benjamin Kingham died, but there is no one else to really put the blame upon. I know some might say the paediatricians at the time should have seen this, but it's not like there's another suspect. Melissa's case is one of compounded tragedy. There was already a tragedy, obviously, with Benjamin, and Melissa being blamed and being sentenced, obviously, to 31 years, is compounding the problem. But with Melissa, we're looking at how her trial played out, how she did not get a fair trial. And this is I think what Kathleen's going to bring up personally with her Habeas petition. It's going to be about it not being a fair trial for Melissa. Revenue pinpoint, the prosecution saying 60, 70, 80 times about a skull fracture, etc., and then new evidence coming forward. But, the fundamental issue with Melissa's case is it was not a fair trial. So let's go again. Where Stephen's is slightly, there's corruption possibly with both, but Stephen's is a big case, especially with making a murder. You've got hundreds of thousands, millions of people zoning in on this, and now what's going on with the Denny, what Zana's doing with this, with the Denny suspects, it's creating a whole new, who did this, who did that, a viable suspect. So Melissa's case is very, very different. To answer your question, I heard about both cases about 3.5, 4 years ago. Melissa's case just before Making a Murder came out, and Stephen's case, I think I watched the documentary in early January, so probably 6 months after. But yeah, I mean, there are similarities, but there are key differences.
Right, yeah. So, what have you learned about Melissa's case in your research of it?
Well, no, sorry, go on, Jack.
What's that?
Sorry, carry on.
I said, what have you learned? What things stand out to you when you research Melissa's case?
Well, with Melissa's case, it's as with most of these things, it's easy to talk to the people on one side. I mean, I've spoken to Dr. Thomas Bard, also spoken to Luca, I've spoken to Foreman, but trying to talk to the other side, trying to talk to people such as, I know, Belenko, trying to talk to Montez, you get nothing. Melissa's case was Benjamin Killen's death was such an emotive case, which was about a 16-month-old child who has died what appears to be, suddenly from a traumatic event. But then when you learn about the background after her trial, what Thomas Rudd did, where he found like a subdural hematoma, where he found evidence of an old injury. During the trial, this wasn't so, obviously because of Melissa's confession, especially when Melissa's trial took place, this idea of false confessions was not as readily sort of agreeable. Like people would just say, no one would falsely confess. But now, of course, we know that they would. I mean, there's similarities between Brenda and Melissa in terms of their, IQ, in terms of their susceptibility to questioning. And with Brendan's case, I mean, he was a juvenile, and while I completely and utterly agree with there should be a different doctrine for being a juvenile and being questioned, I still believe that it should be about the individual. I mean, how old was Melissa when she went to trial? 21? 22?
Right. Yeah, she was 22.
She wouldn't be classed as a juvenile because she's not that number. But when you look at her as an individual, then, that number doesn't matter. This is where the law enforcement need to be better educated. They need to be actually looking at the individual and saying, hey,
right.
This girl, in Melissa's case, has got certain learning difficulties, for want of a better word, but, you can break IQ down into 7 or 8 different categories, whatever it is. I mean, Melissa is very bright and very bright in certain ways, but in others she's not. She's easily intimidated. You can see when you watch the confession tapes, the 8 or 9 hours of Melissa slowly being broken down. It's clear what's going on there. But once you have a confession, and especially when during Melissa's trial, what we're looking at 2000. She's now serving her 11th year. Her trial, 2008, I believe. Back then, public perception was not the same as what it is now.
Right, yeah. So, who have you talked to in Melissa's case?
Okay, well, I mean, Dr. Thomas Rudd, I spoke to him a few months ago, I believe I spoke to him September, October. I've spoken to Paul Foreman. I think most people would be aware of who Paul Foreman was. Paul was the deputy coroner, whilst, to Dr. Eugen Choi. And then, obviously, Dr. Thomas Rudd took over from Dr. Choi. And then we hear about this new set of clear X-rays coming about. This has been obviously Melissa's post-conviction attorney, Kathleen has brought that to light. And then, Thomas Rudd has gone further in and, clearly there is, a pre-existing injury. Benjamin obviously had a big old bump on his head in October, didn't he? And his parents went and took him to the paediatricians, and they looked at Benjamin, they saw it fit that it did not warrant an X-ray or an MRI scan. And I'm sure a lot of people who support Melissa out there would like to lay blame straight at those paediatricians' doors. Now, it's very difficult with a blame game. I think there's already been enough tragedy. Should they have, put them forward for X-rays? Should they have put them forward for MRIs? I think in a perfect world, whenever a child has an injury like that, then yes, they should all the time, to be better than safe than sorry. But at the same time, should the blame be laid firmly at their door? Well, I'm not so sure. What I am sure of is that it shouldn't be laid at Melissa's door. And I think now that Kathleen is going to be filing this Habeas petition, and we'll talk a little bit about the Habeas petition as well, just roughly. I don't want to go massively legally into it, but just we'll explain roughly what that will entail. When I believe she's posted filing March the 27th, I think is the due date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She could file earlier, but I'd imagine it will be March the 27th. She will raise certain issues, and it's not for me to say exactly what she raised, but I'm sure it will be to do with Melissa not receiving a fair trial, partly because of the actions before she went to trial, and partly because what we've learned after she was at trial.
So please explain to people about the Habeas, what that is, and what's going on with that.
Okay, the Habeas would be, that is a separate filing at a federal level. I believe that Kathleen she will be filing that. It'll be in one or two courts. Obviously, in like the second district of Wisconsin, you've got of Illinois. You know better than me. You're there. I think one is. I think one's in Chicago, and I think one is just outside of Elgin. But yeah, there's two places that she can file it. That will be a petition filed, like I said, on the 27th of March. A federal judge will look at that. I'm not sure who it will be, and it will be. She will set out a petition to say why she believes that this is wrongfully incarcerated. It's the exact reasons why, whether she goes on the confession, whether she goes on the X-rays that weren't shown at trial, but mentioned, when they mentioned a fractured, goodness knows how many times, whether it be 60, 70, 80 times, whatever it was. And then, in light of new evidence, whether it be the perjury claims from, towards Dr. Momstairs, that will be up. Obviously, that will be up to Kathleen, and that's not for me to second guess what she will say. But she may well, I'm sure she will. She'll go from many angles, because it will only take 1 point. It will only take a judge to agree with 1 point for that petition to be accepted. And then, if people are aware of what happened with Brendan's case, they filed for ineffective counsel, and they filed for a false confession. Obviously, it went along the false confession lines, and was very, very close to, it was unbelievably drawn out, wasn't it? It went, to an appeal, and that was upheld 2-1, and then it went on bank, and that was unfortunately overturned 4-3. So, but that was on the false confession. I'm sure that Kathleen will have many points within her petition. One of them probably being false confession, one of them being perjury, etc. One of them being a Brady violation in terms of the X-ray not being, disclosed to the defence. But there'd probably be ineffective counsel as well. And that's not to say that Paul DeLuca did a bad job, but with these petitions, ineffective counsel comes up. It's an option. It's a viable option. Not to say that Paul did a bad job, because he didn't. But you're looking for relief, aren't you? So I'm sure she will cover every single base.
Right. So what's your opinion on what happened? Can you, from looking at everything in the case, what do you think happened to Ben?
Well, this is difficult, isn't it? Because firstly, I'm not a lawyer. Secondly, I'm not a paediatrician. What I am is a writer and advocate. I think it's common that again, I said before, it's such an emotive case. When you have a 16-month-old child die, then it is understandable that people want someone to be held accountable, because it's not nice to think that these things can just happen. But unfortunately, they do. And one tragedy being compounded by another is not the way forward. I would never criticise or wish to question parents' motives, because I cannot believe I cannot understand for a single second what Benjamin's parents went through. And I think everyone needs to remember that. Mm-hmm. They've lost one of the, I think they had right. 4 or 5 children. And people must remember that. So, it's easy to go after paediatricians as well. I think, honestly, if an X-ray or an MRI had been, had taken place in October, I very much doubt we'd be in this situation now. But again, I reiterate, I think for people just to lay the blame solely at those paediatricians' doors is very, very harsh. However, what is harsh as well, and probably even more harsh, is that Melissa's been in jail in prison, for nearly 11 years for something that she did not do. I think we should use work by Dr. Thomas Rudd that clearly shows beyond a reasonable scientific doubt that Benjamin had a pre-existing condition. He did have a subdural hematoma. It's clear. I think that work by the likes of Zellner's expert Zimmerman should be clearly used. I mean, we are talking about, people can say whatever they like about Kathleen Zellner. Obviously, she's a brilliant attorney. Her track record speaks for itself. But there is no argument. She uses the finest specialists and experts that are out there. And I think for anyone to disagree with that, it's madness. And when you, because we got to the appellate court level once again for the second time in Melissa's case, and at the evidentiary hearing after the first appeal, you have basically Judge Daniel Shane's, his opinion, he basically trumping that of a preeminent. I mean, Zimmerman's as good as it gets. You look for it, you look peer reviewed, it's as good as it gets. For him to be questioning, I don't think that's right. And for the Court of Appeals to uphold that, I don't think it's right either. And I hope that a federal judge in a federal court will see that. But we shall see. I think a lot of the time it's good to get some distance. With Avery's case, it's similar, isn't it? I mean, there's a lot of people that think that until you get out of Wisconsin, it's not going to go anywhere there either. And that may well be the case with Melissa's. It's looking that way. I think this Habeas petition, obviously it's the way to go. Kathleen decided not to appeal to the Supreme Court of Wisconsin after the appellate court's decision. And, she knows best, isn't she? I don't think they were going to, from what I hear, they weren't going to overturn it. Even if there were errors, they may have said that the appellate court made errors, but they're still not going to overturn. overturn that decision. So yeah, Habeas is the way to go now, clearly, and we will see. Time frame, as always, is it's longer than you'd hope it to be. If Kathleen files on the 27th, then we'll be waiting late summer, autumn, and then we will probably hear something. But I'd be positive. There's a consensus that habeas appeals, especially where it's female clients, merit more. They generally have more success. But we will just have to see. I'd love to offer promises to people, but there's no point because I don't know. Legally, it's not in my remit to do so. I'm here to report on it. But from what I've read and what I've been told, then I think it's good to have a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of minds looking at this. And I was hoping that the appellate court would be those fresh set of eyes and minds, but they turned out not to be.
How did you learn of Melissa's case? What made you focus? There's so many cases of wrongfully accused people. So how do you pick the ones that you focus on?
Well, that's a very, very good question. In Melissa's case, 48 hours is how I heard about it. Obviously, 48 hours was a brilliant job. And a lot of the episodes, it's by the end of it, it was slightly more of a shut case. Melissa's was clearly leaning on the more innocent side. When you talk to Avery and you see the work she's done for it, but also, Ruth Fuller, Brad Edwards, Ruth. I think Ruth started was the first person to report on Melissa's case. But 48 hours is extremely important for making you understand, be aware of Melissa's case. But your question, how do you choose cases? Well, that's really, really difficult. Melissa's case was obviously already represented, so Stephen's. One of the cases that I advocate for and write about is a man by the name of Jermaine Scott, and he's got no publicity whatsoever. But with our organisation, obviously, just starting out with people who've never been heard of before is very difficult. You want to take on cases that, and I'm not saying Stephen's case and Avery's case doesn't merit it, but it does bring a certain following, doesn't it? It does create interest, and then you can introduce other cases. There's a certain hierarchy to a degree, for want of a better terminology. But I think by covering these cases, and all the cases that we cover, we're extremely passionate about, and we believe in their innocence 100%. But all those cases, they have a different level of notoriety, or they have different level of public awareness. And by covering cases, especially Stephen's case, Avery doesn't need me covering his case. He's got thousands of people around the world and far bigger draws than myself. But by us covering them, then I hope that our readers and our viewers will look at the cases that aren't so well known, the cases such as Jermaine Scott. We'd love to, once we get slightly bigger footing, we'd love to take on cases that are completely not known, completely unknown. But like you said, it's very difficult. There's hundreds out there. Yep. And I wish I could cover far, far more. But we only have so many means. It's very, very difficult. I would never say one case is more worthy than another. Because the bottom line is you've got to spend a hell of a lot of time researching, reading over the trial transcripts, reading over the police files over and over and over again. And there's only so much, I'm only a man, and there's only so much I can do. What I can promise is that I will cover Melissa's case until she's free. And that's the same with all the cases I cover. And I wish I could cover 20, but at the moment I cover 6/7, and that's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's how I see it.
Yeah. And have you heard about one of Kathleen's former clients filing suit against her? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Nathaniel Boyd, was it? I read something about it this morning.
Yeah.
Was it Boyd?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. To be honest, I don't know. I don't know enough about that to comment. I don't think that'd be fair of me to comment. I don't know. I don't know his case. So I wouldn't comment on that. Not because I don't want to. I'd be more than happy if you gave me a few days to have a look and read up into it. But I think for me to comment not knowing what I'm talking about would be unfair, and just make me look silly, I think.
I totally agree. What can you say to people out there who want to be advocates? What do you think people should do to help these cases, whether or not it's Melissa, Stephen, Jermaine? What can help?
Well, I think educate yourself as best as you can, and also in the world of social media now, it's very easy just for a headline to be put up and everyone just to jump on it. And I think Avery's case is a great point of example. When you look at what Zown is trying to do at the moment, when she's trying to establish whether there should have been, like Denny suspect, and at the moment, Bobby Dassey, Scott Tadich are certainly, they fit that bill at the moment. I think it's very easy for people to then all of a sudden assume, oh no, well they're definitely guilty. Well, hold on, let's try and, they want due process for certain people, so let's have due process for everyone. Now, whether you believe it or not, that's your opinion. Don't start stating it, stating facts of, they did that. The truth of the matter is, Kathleen Zauner, although she says it is not her job to conduct an investigation, and it's not, it most certainly isn't. The fact is, she is conducting investigations. And this is why you've got a lot of problems with, the motions going on at the moment, motions not being accepted, and motions being accepted. And the reason that motion didn't get accepted is procedural. But the bottom line there is as well is that Kathleen is she's conducting an investigation at the moment, and that is ongoing. Obviously, there are certain dates and times that filings need to be made by, which is fair enough. When the state asks for an extension, everyone is like, well, why are they asking for an extension? But then when the defence asks for an extension, it's like, oh no, it's needed. So you've got to try and have a bit of fairness there. The bottom line is, in Avery's case, it was a shit show, and Kane County, Mantua County, they didn't conduct an investigation, and that's why Zown is having to. That's why Avery's in prison. They conducted no investigation, not a fair investigation across the board. They just obviously zeroed in on one man, and the rest is history.
Right.
So I would, in answering your question, I would learn as much as you can, read everything you can, don't believe things just because you're told them. Like I said before, filings and legal terms, they're very, very terse, and they're deliberately terse because, powers that be quite often don't want like you and I and the public to get too involved. But, it's our right, and people are fascinated by it. And so they should be, because like everyone says, the classic line, it could happen to you. And that's very, very true. It could happen to you. Mm-hmm. So, my fundamental bottom line would be educate yourself, read, get interested. If you're really interested, then get involved in it as much as you can. But get involved by, learning the basics of law. I'm not saying everyone should try and be a lawyer. It's beyond me too. Don't worry. But get involved. Read as much as you can. Educate yourself as much as you can.
Can you explain to people what's the latest in Stephen's case, that people keep misunderstanding what the latest court denial was?
I think it's very, very easy to misunderstand. The word denial, it has obviously negative connotation. There was no real negative connotation here, I don't believe. It was a procedural thing. Obviously, Stephen's been ready to, Downer's been ready to file his brief for some time now. And again, like I alluded to just briefly ago, she's running a continuing investigation. So when she gets here, she wants to add it to as a motion, and then she wants it included in the brief. Well, they've said no, at the moment. You can still do that, but we want the brief. We want the brief. So she's got until February the 2nd, I believe now, she's been given till. So I don't think there'll be any more extensions on that. There will be, she's going to have to file that brief with what she's got at the moment. But this new motion, RE the bones, she's going to be able to file that. That will be a separate motion. So in the long run, the most important thing is that it all becomes part of the record, because we don't know. Once the brief is filed on February the 2nd, you'll have, I believe, something like 60 days, maybe 90 days, I'm not sure on the exact time limit, where the state will be able to reply to her brief. So you'll be looking mid-late spring, and you'll get a reply from the state. And then Zauner herself will be able to reply to their response. And she will be given whatever it is, 30, 60 days, 45 days. I'm not precisely sure. So by the time this plays out, you'll be looking, by the time that the Court of Appeals actually makes a ruling on her brief, you'll be looking towards the end of this year.
Right.
But while all this is happening, Dell will still be conducting her investigation. She will still be finding stuff out, and she will still be filing other motions. But the brief, she's going to put in what she has at the moment to the brief, and that will be done by February the 2nd. By no means does that mean that nothing else will be happening. She'll be investigating and doing whatever she has to do. And there will be other motions filed, but it won't be part of that brief.
Okay. And can you tell people how, even though Stephen and Brendan are connected for this same case, that they were tried differently for different things, and how exactly would whatever Kathleen does for Stephen, how does that affect Brendan's case or not?
Well, that's a very, very good question. In short, I'm not qualified to answer that. I'm just not. It's not usual. I think it is a Wisconsin. Let me try and be as polite as I can about it. It's a Wisconsin oddity. I'm not sure if any other state does it like that, but you don't have to. You can try someone for the same murder by different means and blah blah. I think if you look through Jerry Buting's Twitter feed, I think he explains this quite often. But yeah, you can look this up online. I don't want to say exact terminology because I don't know, but it is a bit of an oddity for Wisconsin. Basically, Wisconsin's a bit screwed up like that. Should that be allowed? No, of course it shouldn't. It's absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, if Stephen gets exonerated or gets a new trial, unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily mean that that'll be, Brendan gets free or a new trial. It just doesn't work like that, unfortunately. But saying that, good news for Stephen certainly can't be bad news for Brendan. I think with the local elections, the primaries or whatever they were, in November, I think that's got to be a good thing. We will see where Tony Evans draws his line in the sand to a degree. I wouldn't expect things too early. I think he jumps into the hot seat. What's he got? About 20 hours. I think he moves in tomorrow morning, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So you would certainly hope so. I think what might be more pertinent in terms of the short time frame is what Josh Carroll does, the Attorney General. I think he has got he might be able to have a more immediate effect. Obviously, he can. I'm not sure veto is the right word, but he can step in, and there doesn't necessarily have to be a filing. He can say, right, let's test these bones. There's no reason not to. But that will be up, that's up to him. So I think, the spotlight might be on him, the new Attorney General before Evers. But I can only see that as a positive thing. There's a lot of talk and evidence as well. What Walker's tried to do before he's left and basically hamstring Evers and co before they even start. But I think it's very, it's clearly a positive thing. Whatever your political allegiance is, I think there's good and bad on, I don't like to use the word sides, but it is sides, isn't it? Whether you're Democrat or Republican, I think there's bad governors on either side. So, but right. Walker was clearly a non-starter for criminal justice reform. So I don't think we can. I think there's got to be political.
Yeah. We have somebody who's been commenting on here that says they are Jermaine Scott's partner. Would you?
Oh, Sarah. Yeah.
Yep. So, would you like to talk a little bit about that case since she's here?
Yeah, of course I will. Yeah, I mean, Jermaine's case is extremely close to my heart because Jermaine had no representation apart from Sarah. And I became aware of his case directly through her. She set up a site, justiceforjermaine.com. I mean, by all means, go on there, have a look. As with all good sites, anyone who's claiming to be wrongfully convicted, there is all the information on there. So you've got the trial transcripts, you've got as many police files as they can get, you've got, as much information as possible. A little bit like what I was saying earlier, educate yourself, read these things. These are the most important things to go on about. When people go on about making murder and say, oh, well, the documentary was slanted, it was all this crap. No, that's not the point. The point is that people have taken an interest and they've actually read from the trial transcripts and they've taken that step further, and that's what you have to do. And likewise with Jermaine's case, I wanted to take on a case that had zero representation. My goal really is I'd like to do a bookends thing. I'd like to take on cases of potential wrongful conviction before they are represented, and work on their case and then get them representation. With Jermaine's, we've been speaking. Sarah and I have been speaking to the Ohio Innocence Project. And for anyone out there as well who's interested in wrongful convictions, go through your Innocence Projects. Nearly all states have an Innocence Project. And our goal was to get Jermaine representation. If I can do that through writing and advocacy, and then as soon as he's got representation, and a lawyer who knows what they're doing, and then, I can take a step back because that's not my remit. But Jermaine's was a classic case of wrongful conviction. His was a classic case of two crimes all rolled into one. There was no DNA evidence, like zero DNA evidence. It was because of his participation in a fraud crime that was linked to a murder that he just got wrapped into it. And there was literally no investigation. They didn't actually take any. They didn't do any forensics on the crime scene, for instance. you've got to ask yourself why. But they did take certain things into evidence, which is great. And obviously, the statute of limitations, it's a murder case. They should hold on to that evidence. And we're hoping by not working with, but by being in contact with the Ohio Innocence Project, that then they can use their expertise and also their ability to have access to evidence to get the ball rolling. We've worked hard on Jermaine's case. It's very, very much, it's difficult because I'd love to represent 5, 10, 20 cases, but the amount of time,
right.
I've probably spent in the last 18 months, I've spent 1,000 hours on Jermaine's case, reading documents, writing people, it's just, there's not the manpower to do it. And anyone listening to this who has a loved one or knows of someone, who they believe is wrongfully convicted, I'm on your side. I wish I could help, and I will help. I want to shout out to John Brookings as well. That's a case that I'm very interested in and I want to take on, and I will. But just simply the time and the resources is very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. What are the big things that we need here in the States for criminal justice reform? What what needs to be done?
Well, again, that's a huge question and a very good one. I think the tide is turning to a degree. I think public awareness is huge. People have got to realise that they do count, and what they writing to their local officials is important. And don't just do it once. Keep doing it. Keep writing to them. And the only way it's really going to turn is by the vote. I mean, I think if you, again, going back to Wisconsin because it is pertinent, if you look at Walker and if you look at Skimmel and what happened to them, well, I think it was, it wasn't. It was reasonably close still. They didn't get usurped by a great margin, and I think public awareness, and I think the making a murder, and then the social media. I think that quite possibly did turn the tide. If you look at Walker's being voted out, he was voted out by the youth. If you looked at Milwaukee, I think it was it Milwaukee and Madison that were the two key places,
yes.
that saw his demise. And if you look at the demographics there, it was the youth that changed that vote, and that's to be applauded. But at the same time, now that Evans has come in, he's got to stand up and be counted, because if he isn't, and if he doesn't do anything, then where do we stand?
Right. Stephen's case. What's your theory?
What's my theory on what? What's my theory on what's my theory on who murdered Teresa Halbach? Sorry, be slightly more specific.
Yes, on what happened to Teresa Halbach.
Wow. All I can say is that the theory presented at trial, that's not what happened to Teresa Halbach. I don't know. I mean, I think it creates great interest to have all these theories, and this person did this person did that. Okay, that's all very interesting. But the bottom line again here is what was presented at trial is complete and utter fiction, and that's what got Stephen Avery sentenced to life without parole, and that's not right. So I think there's clearly a certain degree of police corruption in there. There's, in terms of protocol, what should have happened, it's obvious, it's in black and white. In terms of the way Kenneth Kratz acted. That again is in black and white. But in terms of actually what happens to Teresa, I don't know. And I think there is a lot of people who want to jump on the bandwagon and, believe, have verbatim what is being said, well, what is being theorised by Zellner as part of the Denny motion, and then believing that is truth. Well, I think people need to step back a little bit. This is still a theory. Like I said before, with, if you want due process, then you've got to have due process for everyone. There's a lot up, but I don't know what happened. I think should Denny have been allowed during Avery's visit? Of course it should. Whether that is due, fundamentally just down to cracks, or whether that is somewhat to do with ineffective counsel, I'm not sure. Let's see how that plays out. But obviously, understandably, Downer's going for both angles, isn't she? My personal belief is that obviously Kratz is a despicable human being. I think we all know that. But whether it can be proven that he's violated law, then you have to see by the courts. I think the brief will be very interesting. The Court of Appeals is the level. You don't expect the trial court just to say, "Oh no, I've got to turn it over." But it's clear that Suckovitz wasn't interested whatsoever. She doesn't want a single piece of this case. But the Court of Appeals decision will be that's when you'll know whether you might as well say, "Oh, forget it. Let's get out of Wisconsin. Let's file a habeas now." We'll see what the Court of Appeals says. And through that brief. Yeah. If they don't, there's no reason for them to not grant an evidentiary. Just absolutely no reason at all. If you look at Melissa's case, there was no issue in granting an evidentiary hearing there. Not that it ended up turning out for the best, but there was no issue there. What will be interesting is if the Court of Appeals does grant an evidentiary hearing, and we'll see where that evidentiary hearing takes place and by which judge that takes place. Because if they do, then Zellner's motion for a substitution of judge will become pertinent again. Then I believe the timing for that will be correct. I could be wrong on that though, but then I think that will become a point in case to see whether it goes out as your boy and goes back into Manchrock again, and you have a judge actually from Manchrock take over the evidentiary hearing. I don't know. All I know for certain is it won't be Judge Willis.
Yeah. Explain Denny. I don't understand how Denny is even a thing that it can't show other suspects.
Right. Well, Denny is specific to Wisconsin, but on a broader sense, Denny obviously is to do with third-party liability. I think if anyone, again, for me to explain Denny is not just what I would say is specifically go and look at Dean Strang. Just about a month before trial started. If you go to Stephen Avery, for anyone who's listening, go to Stephen Avery, StephenAveryCase.org or whatever it is, where they've got all they've got everything lined out on there. There's I think 3 pre-trial motions. One was to do with Denny. There was another date that was to do with the blood. Because obviously they were looking to test the blood, and that's when obviously LeBeau came in and gone, found a test from the FBI, etc. But I don't really understand Denny, and by what I read through this motion hearing shortly before Avery's trial, Dean Strang doesn't really either. He didn't really believe that Denny should have been applied to this case. Let me click through it. I'll find the exact link, but there are better people than me to explain something like Denny. put simply. I mean, if you really, if you want to find the case law, it'd be up there. Look on something like I don't know there's plenty of sites out there where you actually find, it's called Denny because it's come from it's case law, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And you can look at it through there. Layman's terms, it's third liability. It's third liability, being able to justifiably accuse someone else. So there's 3 prongs to Denny, isn't there? Let me just draw this up while we're talking about it, because this particular piece of this particular transcript is perfect. What we'll do is we'll come back to it and I'll post it on the Facebook so people can look at it.
Okay.
If they read that, it'll be far better than me trying to explain it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And what about something people always bring up in wrongfully convicted cases on should they take an Alford plea? Do you have any thoughts on Alford plea?
Wow. It's difficult to say because it's all very well for me sitting here in my lounge and saying, oh yeah, you shouldn't take an Alford plea because, you should, stay until the end because you're innocent. But if you've been in prison 15 years already and you don't take that plea and then you go to trial and you get convicted again, then, obviously what you got to do is, I can't say that as just a fortunate human being able to sit here in, luxury by comparison. If you look at, I don't know, what's the classic? Say the West Memphis Green, you've got Charles Baldwin. I mean, he didn't want to take the plea, did he? But considering there's a man's life at risk, he took it, didn't he? But I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't have taken that plea if Eccles hadn't been on the death row. Mm-hmm. It comes down to a moral choice. It comes down to an ethical choice. If you're cynical or maybe just truthful, the reason the plea may be offered is so there's no liability left for the state. There's no, there's going to be no civil case afterwards, is there? But how do you value freedom? How do you value? Again, it's an individual case. If say Brendan or Stephen got offered a plea, should they take it? Right. I don't think that's for us.
Correct.
To decide. I think that's for them to decide. They've lived what they've gone through. So these are very good questions, by the way. But and I don't want to be. I don't mean to sound non-committal, but that's not really for us to answer. I could get up on my high horse and say, no, you should never ever take it if you're innocent. But the truth of the matter is, if you go through a retrial and you get found guilty again, I bet you wish you'd taken it. So very, very difficult. If the justice system was just, then it would probably be an easier answer, but it's not, is it?
So what's next in the Melissa Kaluzinski case? The filing in March, what's the whole process with that?
Well, March the 27th, isn't it? It's due, I believe, 26th, 27th, I think it's the 27th. So, that will be filed. Like I said, the state will have the opportunity to, that will be filed with the federal court, and then we'll wait. I think for Melissa's case, look at Brendan's case. It's going along a similar sort of path. Obviously, with Brendan, his petition was filed, and Judge Duffin, bless his soul, looked at it, and that began what looked to be a positive course of action. I'm aware of what happened in the end, but we will see. I would be hopeful. I'm sure that Kathleen is going to file many points, and only one of them needs to be picked up, by a federal judge and say that warrants relief. Unfortunately, if that judge does grant relief, then the state will appeal it. That's just a sad truth. So there's no quick fix.
Right.
I'm not really very popular for saying that, but unfortunately that's just the truth. If there is relief, then the state will appeal, and then you may see, like Brendan's case, in Brendan's position, you'll see something like that unfold. They're both obviously Wisconsin and Illinois, both same circuit, isn't it? It'll be a 7th Circuit. If there's an appeal, that would go before a 3-judge panel, very much like Brendan's did. And then whatever the result of that, there would be an appeal by either side. And then the thing with Brendan's case was the likelihood of getting an en banc rehearing was extremely slim, yet it happened. But yeah, that would be the process again that Melissa would go through. I'd be very hopeful, but as with everything, it depends which judge picks it up. If you look at Brendan's case, the disparity between the 3 judges who were on Brendan's side and the 4 that weren't, there's no middle ground there, is there? Some people are just strictly applying EDPA, and some people are applying common sense, and we know which of those are on which side. But we'll see. I'm 100% positive that Melissa's confession was false, coerced. Do I think a federal court will agree with that? No, I don't. I don't think Melissa's going to be granted relief because of her confession. I think Melissa will be granted relief because there was clearly a pre-existing injury, and more importantly, what happened at trial was that the prosecution kept feeding the skull fracture over and over again, and that it was not a fair trial specifically due to that. The perjury side of things is again going to be a difficult one. I hope certain things come more to light with regard to that. There's no, when Montez said he was there conducting an autopsy, well, there's no records for that. Those records are missing. That shouldn't happen. I spoke to Paul Foreman a couple of months ago. There was a login every time you want to conduct an autopsy. Those files are missing. It's a little bit like all the photos and evidence photos. None of them are timestamped. These things should not happen. They should certainly raise a great deal of doubt in any prospective person who's going to look at that case. But yeah, I don't mean to be downbeat, but I very much doubt the false confession will come to play. But potential Brady violations certainly, perjury is possible. But we will see. I have no doubt Kathleen will file a very, very conclusive and very, very detailed petition.
Yeah. Speaking of Brendan's case, can you tell people where Brendan's case is now? Because people automatically think that since the Supreme Court denied to hear the case, he's done. That there's nothing else for him to do.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't be any further from the truth. and he was most certainly not done. No, what Brendan is saying, they're perfectly allowed to submit another post-conviction relief, but it depends what it would be on. I don't think it certainly wouldn't be on the confession, obviously, because that has been, deemed. His confession has been deemed to be, his confession has been deemed to be, it's voluntary. That's gone. That's done. The ineffective counsel, I'm not so sure. I think they went after Kaczynski, didn't they? But again, if you look at a lot of what Buting has said, he offered Dassey's attorney at trial a lot of information that he didn't take on board. I mean, he didn't even play the blooming confession, did he? So whether they go on that angle, I think Evers coming in is a big deal. I think that makes a huge difference. As with the new Attorney General, I think Brendan's case is by no means it will never be over until he gets out. Again, I'm loath to say what specific legal things are going to happen because I don't know. It's not my place. But by no means are his avenues, over, exhausted. By no means.
Why isn't it a big deal that Stephen and Brendan were tried for completely different scenarios for what happened to Teresa by the same court and the same prosecutor? How does that happen?
Well, I mean, again, I think we touched on this a little bit before, didn't we? It's I'm not sure if it's only in Wisconsin, but it's certainly there wouldn't be many other places where that is allowable. To the layman, it's complete madness, isn't it? I can't give you a succinct or a decent answer for that because I don't understand it myself. It's absolutely ridiculous. But then, it's important that it's part of the record. I mean, Brendan's case is difficult because he was only convicted on his confession. There is no other evidence, is there? So it is difficult. With Stephen's case, it's the reason I think he's got a very, very good chance is because he's rather more so than Zauner's own theories on what happened. She is blowing the state's theory of what happened out the water. I mean, it's impossible for their theory to be true. And the most important thing there is that the state is not allowed to change their theory. What they presented at trial, that sticks. That stays there. But yeah, in terms of law, Wisconsin's allowed to do that. That beats me. It's ridiculous. I don't. How do these laws get changed? I think this is certainly something that the public can do. They should be, every single member should be writing, especially if they're within Wisconsin, saying, this is ridiculous. Right. We don't want this. We want a change of legislation there. How easy that will come about is another matter altogether. But they've begun the right process and repeat themselves again. But I think you've got you've certainly got a better governor and a better Attorney General now. Whether they prove to be what we hope, time will tell. That's up to them, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. You're being asked, why is your Twitter handle Sickakey, or is it Sickakey?
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, I mean that's just a throwaway Avery reference, obviously. Mm-hmm. There's no particular. There's no deep meaning. Don't start going on spreading things on social media because I always thought it was very interesting that there would be a note left there. Obviously, it wasn't there's no stamp on it. There's nothing. So it's nothing. It is far away, but I was always interested. As soon as I watched Making a Murderer, I jumped on Reddit and I used that. I stuck that as my name, and then I used it as my Twitter name. And I probably should have changed it about 2.5 years ago, but now I just haven't got the heart to change it. So I think that'll probably stick for the rest of my life. But no, there's no great meaning to it. There's no great, honestly, no conspiracy theories out there. It's just a handle. The bit before the act is the most important bit.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the Sikkake letter? Do you think it's Sikkake means skinny?
Wow. Do I think that it means skinny? I think that the note is quite possibly important. Whether I'd stretch as far as saying, do I think Sikkake is skinny? It's possible. What I will say is I think you will find out a lot more about the Sikkake note in Zauner's brief. I forget the lady who was, I don't know, was she a secretary or something at the Foundry? I can't remember her name. But obviously Zauner and her team have spoken to her. I would imagine that they would have certainly spoken to all of the employees there. So I'm pretty confident you will hear a bit more about that within Zauner's brief. And at 35,000 words, and that's just the brief. Remember, that's nothing to do with the exhibits. It's just the brief itself. The exhibits is what they say, something ridiculous, aren't they? Like another 2,000 pages or whatever.
Wow.
Just the brief is going to be 35,000 words. So I'm pretty sure you'll hear something more about that. Plus lots of other things as well, and lots of new evidence as well.
Yeah. What do you think about the bones that she's trying to get for the rapid DNA ID testing? What do you think the importance of those bones are?
Well, this is interesting as well because this is not this is something that's been spoken about for 3 years, isn't it? The bones in the quarry. This is not new in terms of people knowing about there being bones there. I think the rapid DNA testing is very interesting, and not because of the time that it takes, but because it can still identify extremely degraded bones. I think that's the most important thing. Obviously people want things to happen very quickly, but whether they're going to be tested in 2 hours or 2 weeks doesn't matter. What matters is how good the test is. Because obviously a lot of these bones are in extremely bad condition. If you look at, is it Selden, the bloke who's doing the testing or come up with this theory? Obviously, the California wildfires, we've had a great success rate there. I think 85% success rate or something, with extremely badly burnt remains, degradation to an extreme level. So that's interesting. First of all, everyone wants to jump to conclusions, and I'm the same. I'm really, really fascinated and interested. Let's find out first. Let's see if they do come back. If they do come back as Teresa Habeas remains, then I think there's some serious issues there, no doubt about it. And I think people saying that Avery scooped up some bones, stuck in a bucket and then threw them over on Manchester County gravel pit is laughable.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think of people who bring up Carmen Bootwell as possibly being the bones? It's not something I would subscribe to, that's for sure. But there's a lot of people that would subscribe to the fact that Teresa's not dead. Personally,
I probably wouldn't go as strongly as Stephen Drizzy. But I'd probably go near. It's not. No, I don't. I don't believe that. That's sort of. I don't think they're related. I don't think they're related. No.
Okay. And then what about the coroner that we learned a lot more about in Making a Murderer Part 2 of
Yeah.
how she wasn't allowed on the scene. And then there's also the talk of that's connected to the Ricky Hochstetler case.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think Ricky's cases should be promoted a lot more. I think whether they are directly connected or not is possibly by the by. I think what it does show is that Manitowoc Police Department and the Sheriff's Office, there's, to coin a phrase from Strang, there's like a systemic problem there that's been running through for a long, long time. Like Ricky's case was not investigated properly at all. I know a few people who know that case very well, and I think the public should look into Ricky's case a hell of a lot more. I think there's been a major issue throughout Manitowoc's. There's always this talk of a boys' club. I don't know how much that is truth there is in that, but there's clearly been issues for generation or two there, clearly.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody if they were to be questioned by the police? What should they do to protect themselves?
But I think now it's better. I don't think there's as much of a stigma about saying, "Oh no, I want an attorney." I think maybe 10, 20 years ago, if you would just immediately say, "I want my lawyer," or "I want a phone call," whatever it may be, that may have been perceived as someone saying that is almost like a slightly admitting guilt. I think that's completely gone now. It doesn't matter what it's for. I would say, I know my rights. I'm clearly not waiving my Miranda rights. Yeah, I'd like to see. I'd like a lawyer. There's nothing wrong with. No one should ever think, "Oh God, if I say that, then am I sort of admitting guilt?" No, you're not. Not at all. Just ask for a lawyer. Not a problem. Just fundamentally, as simple as that. Just ask for a lawyer. Just ask for a lawyer.
And what happens if the lawyer that's appointed to you, if you cannot afford one, is a Len Kuczynski?
It's a very good question, isn't it? You'd like to believe that there are very, very few Len Kuczynskis out there. I can't say, I can't promise that taking certain advice is going to mean that you're successfully you're going to be okay. But what I could say and can say is that you take the best steps you can. If you can, then you ask for a lawyer. Simple as that. I appreciate that the majority of people out there will be, they'll be assigned a lawyer because they certainly can't afford one. And I think it is worth reiterating that the majority of public defenders are excellent, and the majority of law enforcement are excellent. I mean, it's very easy to get into the mindset because we look into wrongful convictions that there's more of this than there actually is. The majority of people working in these positions are very, very good. They're very honest, and they believe in what they're doing. They're very good at what they do. So don't get paranoid. But yeah, if you do get put in a spot, ask for an attorney. Of course, straight away.
Right. Does that apply like in the UK? The same thing there, or how are things different?
Yeah, well, the UK. UK's got a hell of a lot to learn as well, and a hell of a lot to do. There may be certain areas where the UK is probably maybe doing better than the US, but I think there's certainly certain areas where we're not. Again, for want of repeating myself, I think that stigma's gone. I don't think people should be worried about saying no. Actually, I want an attorney. I want a lawyer. I'm not going to talk to you until there's one pregnant. There's no issue with that. That doesn't mean you're guilty. I think that's common sense. I think that's a good idea. I think every country's got their problems, and they all aim to do better. I think some of the leading countries in the world are probably Scandinavia. Again, if you look at techniques that they're using, I know the UK's been using it before. When they're interviewing people, it's the piece system rather than the read system. Obviously, the read system's got a huge slagging, hasn't it? Quite rightly so, because it's well behind the times. The US is starting to try and implement a new system, BBJ or BJB, that will hopefully replace Reed. I think Reed, not sure if you know Jax, but I think Reed's been basically, I think there's a bit of stop to it in certain states, isn't there? But we hope that within the next few years and more and more states would stop using it. But then you've got to have a whole re-education system for the officers who are using these techniques.
Mm-hmm. Bobby Dassey, the whole his computer and everything there. What are your thoughts on Bobby Dassey?
I think people have got to remember that Downer is basically putting forward that as any suspect, you should have been allowed. And I go on about due process again, but it's important. Very easy again for people to say, well, clearly, Bobby Dassey is involved, he's guilty, and so is Scott Davidge. I don't know, but we've got to again look back at what was represented at trial. The reason Bobby Dassey's been firstly looked at because he is the state's key witness, isn't he? So if you can defame, if you can rubbish what Bobby Dassey said, it's not looking great in terms of the accountability for what he said at trial. And what he said at trial is massively important. If that's found to be untrue, if he is found to actually it is perjury, he lied, then that's massive. That's huge for Stephen. But that doesn't mean that Bobby Dassey necessarily did it. Darren's got a theory. So that's what it is. I mean, I don't see that there's any proof that he did it. I think there's proof that there should have been, Denny should have been allowed, and I think there should have been a third party. And I think Kratz primarily is to blame for that. He clearly needed evidence, exculpatory evidence from the defence. Again, whether that comes to be, whether the courts say that's true is another matter altogether. I don't know. It's not my place to say. In my opinion, you definitely.
Right.
I think Kratz has got a hell of a lot to answer for. I think the Bobby Dassey theory is interesting. I think it's potentially believable. I don't think people should get too over the top and things like that. He definitely did it because it's slightly hypocritical and due process. Let's let the investigation play out to a certain extent.
Yeah, and what do you think of Ryan Hilgas? Do you think there's anything there, or that's just another throwing out there a possible Denny?
Well, I think Ryan is very, very interesting. I think what's even more interesting is that the law enforcement, chose to use Ryan basically and have him as part of the investigation. It's crazy. I mean, I've never heard of an ex-boyfriend sort of helping out with the police to run their investigation. Very, very strange. I think the fact that Ryan's not saying anything now doesn't necessarily mean that much, but there's a lot of unanswered questions in there. I think the 18 no-caller IDs is certainly interesting. We'll have to see. He shouldn't have been allowed on the property. As simple as that. I mean, I spoke to a couple of law enforcement officials, and they're like, "What? What on earth is he doing? Like, being part of the investigation or helping out with the investigation? That's just a no-go. You don't do that. Very, very, very strange. He clearly knows a couple of bits and bobs. Whether that means there's guilt, I don't know. Again, I wouldn't like to say, but there's something up there. He shouldn't have been involved in the investigation whatsoever.
Yeah. Final question.
Yeah.
What are you up to? How can people follow you? What's going on? Anything you'd like to plug?
Well, I'm not a huge plugger, but obviously you can. The best place to go really is criminaljusticereformjournal.com. Myself and Grace, we're there. We're hoping to bring in maybe a couple of new people as well. But you can see the latest we've done there. The law is in some cases so slow. I'm covering Clinton Young.
Hold on.
We've been
Sorry, Paul just called me on my phone, so I just put him on audio. Hold on, can anybody hear him talk?
Hey, Jax.
Yeah.
Hey, we're on our way home. I got stuck where I was at, so it's gonna be a while before I can get on.
Okay, well we're finishing up now. You're on. I put you on audio. You're on live right now.
Oh, okay.
That's all right. We can if Paul wants to talk a bit later, we can always come back on and do a bit later as well.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Did you hear that, Paul? He says if you want to talk later, we can come back on at a later time and all three of us can talk.
Yeah, that'd be good. And then we can just talk specifically about Melissa.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do it a little bit later or something. How's everything going up there in London? Can you hear me?
James, did you hear him? He's asking how are things in London?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm a little bit south of London, but it's okay. But yeah, Paul, honestly, if you can get on a bit later, then I'm more than happy to come back. That would be great. Then we'll have a good chat about it.
Okay, maybe we can do a second one, Jax, huh?
Sure, Paul. I'll talk to you. I was just ending with him actually, so I'll call you back when we're done here, and then we'll talk about a time.
Okay.
All right.
Like I said, we got tied up where we were at, and man, I tell you, traffic is real bad coming on the expressway. All these goofy people coming home,
No problem. All right. Well, say goodbye to everybody, and then I'll call you when I end here.
Okay, we'll talk to you later. Bye. We'll talk to you soon.
See you soon, Paul.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. So go ahead again with what you were saying. I'm sorry.
What was I saying? I can't remember now.
I was asking where people can follow you.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, through criminaljusticereformjournal.com. Check that out. And also you can check me out, James Didcock, on Twitter. Grace Winterwood as well on Twitter, because she does the same work as me, slightly different cases, but the same thing. So yeah, Twitter and criminaljusticereformjournal.com, they're the two main places. My direct messages are always open, so anyone can get in contact with me. Whether I agree with what they're saying is no matter, but you can get in contact with me there.
Okay. So, all right, well then I'll thank you for your time so far today, and I will call Paul and see if he wants to go on later today, and I'll message you and we can discuss a time that will work.
If Paul wants to go on, then I'm there.
Okay. So, thank you
so
much, and we will talk soon.
Thanks, Jax. Apologies for everything being so difficult today. Apologies to the listeners as well.
Yeah, I'm not a good techie person either, so I totally get it.
I'm terrible. But we got there. We got there in the end.
Yes. All right. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see everybody soon.
Speak soon.
All right, bye-bye.